A brief broadcast.
The Prime Minister improper ordinary
at war.
So today we're talking with Corporal Fred Adams. He's D Company, 168th, 34th Infantry Division. He was an original Camp Claiborne man.
I was born right in Des Moines, Iowa, January 24th, 1923. Well, it was probably like everybody else at the time. You know, it was during the Depression, and I was pretty active, I guess. I'd go fishing, or when I was a smaller kid, I'd go to my aunt's once in a while for jelly and bread and jelly. She always made canned, but and then we had neighbors. They were just like the whole family. If you done anything, the neighbors would correct you before you ever got home. So you was always on the lookout.
Did you come from a small family or a large family?
No, it was a large family. I still have one sister younger than me. She's 4 years younger than me. There was 9 girls and 3 boys in the family. And, of course, they were older than me. All the girls except the last 2, Jenny and Peg, were married and gone when I was growing up. And they had children that was older than me. We were always a pretty close family. I mean, you know, it had to be back then to make it, you know. But you could go with anybody if you wanted to. They were going to do something. You go with them. It was just like it going with your family.
Tell me a little bit about meeting your sweetheart. Did you meet her during was she from Des Moines?
Yes, she was from Des Moines. And I met her through a friend. And we got pretty close right off because her dad worked at the packing house. And they always had meat and potatoes and gravy stuff for Sunday dinner, so that's where I was usually for Sunday dinner. And my wife, she made the pies and stuff. They always had pies. But that's how we met, through a friend. And then we just started going together. We'd go roller skating, and we'd walk from one end of town to the other and skate till 10 o'clock and walk home. But her mom usually had a plate full of donuts. She'd made some donuts for us when we'd walk on there.
What was her name? Right.
Mabel was her mother's name.
What was your sweetheart's name?
Marie.
You got married to her, right?
Yes.
And when was that?
July the 12th, 1939. We was married 75 years, 9 months, and 18 days. I couldn't find jobs. They wouldn't hire kids when they could, grown-ups they could go. I had one good job when I was a kid, and it was close to, was out in this area, going over there some, but Mr. Green, he had Green Orchard, and he had cherries, and he had apples, and he had berries. I got the job picking berries. And he said, well, I can see you come to work. And I said, yeah. Well, he said, how would you like to come every morning? And your job will be to see that my wife has kindlings, wood for the stove, and water if she needed it. And you have to pick up the windfalls, apples, whatever it was. And I got $1 a day plus the change that he had. I didn't have to milk cows. He had about 5 cows or something like that. I'd get them up at the barn for him. I didn't have to, but I'd do it. Because that was a pretty good job. Because you'd pitch hay for $1 a day in your meal. And that was one of the best jobs I had. And then they had a coal mine out there. This was after we got married. They had the coal mine. And I was pulling slate in the summertime and laying track for the miners in the wintertime. Well, when they come to go to work and they found out how young I was, they wouldn't go down in the mine with me. So I lost that job. It just so young you couldn't hold a job. Nothing that made any sense. And that was one reason I went out, moved out and toward Fort Des Moines, and the Latcher boys was there. I went to school with Leo Latcher. He was the younger one, but Johnny was the older one, and he was the one that was in the National Guard. So he said, well, why don't you join? It's money. So that's when I joined the National Guard.
So that was in 1940?
40, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your first experiences in the Guard and where you trained and how you trained.
Well, we trained there at the Armory. It's gone now, but it was right down on the riverfront. And we'd go down there at certain nights. I think it was a Wednesday, I'm not sure, and drill in the auditorium, or whatever you want to call it. It was a basketball court more than anything else. But anyway, we'd drill there and, simulate going. The mortars had stovepipes, or what they was using for mortars. And of course, we had the guns in, but they were 22s is what they shot. They didn't shoot 30. And it had a range downstairs where you could go down there and go through the procedures and could shoot the 22s through there. Because they had the sand and stuff back in there where it wouldn't go.
The machine gun, the M1917 water cooled?
Yes.
And so you were D Company, correct?
Right.
And D Company was?
A machine gun company.
And that was the heavy weapons company,
yeah.
The 1st Battalion?
40 is when it was. And then when summer come, we went to Camp Ripley for 3 weeks or whatever it was. And I trained up there, and after we did that, well, when we come home and went to the meeting, I made a corporal.
Did that put you in charge of something?
Yeah, a squad.
So
in charge of the squad.
A squad leader?
Yeah.
Bring me up to February 10th, 1941. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, that's the day they took us into the Army. We left the Guards that day. And when they mobilized, we went to the McCune building, it was called. And each company had a floor in there, and that's where we stayed. And we'd march up and down Court Avenue a little bit once in a while for our exercise and that's where we stayed till we got ready to go to Camp Claiborne. And then, of course, the depot, we just walked from the building to the train. It was right close. All by train, as far as I know.
And do you remember the train trip at all?
Oh, yeah, it wasn't all that bad. It just took down through Missouri and Arkansas, right on down. You was there.
End of February, March, sometime?
Yeah, but all the tents weren't ready yet. They didn't have the boards up on them, so they had to fix them. We didn't, they did. They had some people doing it.
What was your first impression of the camp when you guys got
Well,
there?
it was just a mud hole. It was my impression of it. So what we did, we got skids, wooden skids like they moved stuff on, and built sidewalks down, curved the length of our company to the latrine, which was down at the far end. And the mess hall was up front. My tent was the first one on this side, but I wouldn't miss the mess hall. First sergeant's tent was on the back side of mine. But anyway, it was all mud, and we just got that, and we, leveled the ground a little, whatever it took to make that sidewalk out of them pallets. That's how we got out of the mud.
You had to put boards up on the tents?
We didn't. No, they contracted that. But you had a tent and about 4 or 5 men in a tent. And, of course, there's, 14 men in a squad, but probably about 12 then. We wasn't up to strength, And 2 tents would be my squad. And, of course, you had an inspection every Saturday, so everybody always tried to make sure they had everything just right.
What kind of bedding did they have for you? Do you remember?
It just cots is all. Them folding cots is all I remember.
You guys are from Midwest Iowa, and you get down to deep South Louisiana. Tell me, did you have any interactions with the locals, and how was that between the 34 soldiers and the
Well, we were pretty much I can't say anything for the other companies, but being from Des Moines, there were a lot of colored folks here, so we had no trouble with them. I was born and raised around them. And like I say, Miss Lou and me fished for years together. Her husband, Tom, he worked at the poultry factory, and that's why we had chicken on Sunday down there. But anyway, that's how, and I went to school with them. I think Moses Clinton, I think he was in that Tuskegee or whatever it was, that air, the colored air. I think he was in there. I don't know what he was a pilot or what, but he was in it. And the movies and stuff we had at the roadside settlement, the community center, they were segregated. We had a day and they had a day, and finally they put us all together before it was over. But Willie Clinton, he was a little older, and he'd stand up at the end, a block away, a block and a half, whatever, and wait for me to get up there so we could go to the movie, and then when we come home, he'd wait there till I got at home. I could wave him back. But he was real. All the Clintons were good. They worked for the city, the dad and the older boys.
Was there a town nearby that you guys could go to?
Yeah, there was a little one right outside the camp. I can't think of the name of it.
Is Alexandria, Louisiana?
Alexandria was the big town.
That was the big one?
That's where that was so crowded. The servicemen, it was elbow to elbow in there. Nobody wanted to go there.
Right.
So we'd go outside the camp sometimes to that little, it was just like one of these mini malls we have now, shopping areas. Well, it was kind of like that. There was some stores in it, so no grocery store, just other. But we could go out there and have a beer or so. And
did they have post exchanges on the base for you?
Yes, they did.
Like rec centers or anything for
yes.
you guys?
Yes, they did. We could go there and buy a beer. First it was bottles, and then it went to cans. But the guys wouldn't police them up. They'd throw them on the ground outside wherever they were going. So they finally just said, no more. You can't take anything out of there. So we all got gallon jugs that they had ketchup or mustard or stuff in. And as soon as we was dismissed, you had to take your turn going to the PX, getting that full of beer and bringing it back so we could have it at the camp in our tent. Like I say, we took turns doing that. But that's the only way you could get it out of there.
Right. Did your wife, did she ever come see you? Or was she, I heard a lot of families that had married men, their families would actually come down, and some of them actually moved down there.
Yeah, my wife come down with the oldest boy, and Monroe, I think, was the town of Louisiana. And they had these boarding houses. You paid so much a month, for one or two, whatever you had, and your meals was there. And I'd go down there on the weekends, and it cost me $0.25 for a meal. But the old grandma that owned the place, her daughter run it. Well, me and Marie, I called her Mom all the time. We'd always visit with her on the front porch, because all there was to do was to go to a movie. They had a movie theater there, but that got kind of old. But anyway, I'd go out there, we'd visit with her. So she got to liking me. She said, you tell, I can't remember the girl's name, that you paid me, paid her. So she come out and asked for it, and he said, he paid me. And I didn't have to pay a penny for it. And they had a bullfrog, a big one somebody got, and he put him on a string, a fish cord, and had him tied on the clothesline where he could and that kid of mine, he wasn't very big, he just thought that was the greatest thing in the world, that for a toad. And they told this one woman, as she was a lieutenant's wife, and going to have frog legs. She wasn't going to eat no frog legs. Well, they fried them up they looked just like chicken legs. She ate frog legs and didn't even know she was eating them.
The food in Midwest is a little bit different than Louisiana. Did you guys get to try seafood or anything?
Yeah,
like
we
that
tried. They had gumbo, chicken gumbo all over you. So they were real friendly people. It's just how, people are people the world over. I don't care where you're at. You treat them like people, they'll treat you like people. You be mean to them, they'll be mean to you. And I never had no problem any place I ever went, because it's all the same.
What was the training like leading up before the maneuvers? We'll get into the maneuvers later. But what was the training like leading?
Well, first thing you did, you policed up the area. You went out, if any cigarette butts, anything on the ground, you picked them up so you get it out of there. So the area was clean. And then you do an hour or so calisthenics. Then you could go to the latrine, wash up, get ready, have breakfast. So, and after breakfast, you fall back in, and that's when you go to the field or go somewhere. Sometimes they could hold them in the mess hall, if it was later in the day or something. And that mess hall was used for quite a bit of different things. Well, you'd go out to the field and practice setting up the machine gun and taking it down, and that was our job. If rifle companies did other things, we went together. And then you would learn, they'd have a class, you'd sit there and the nomenclature of a 30 caliber machine gun. You learn how to take it down, put it back. You could do it blindfolded. You had a pin in the end. It had a slot in it where you could put a screwdriver in it, but your thumb got tough enough, you could then turn that, pull that butt off, the handle, take the thing up, pull the whole mechanism out, and take it apart and put it back together again. And you kind of had a little contest so you could do it fastest, you just stay busy, that's all it was.
And you being a corporal at that time, and you're in charge of a machine gun squad. Yeah. Were you in charge of some of the classes, or?
No, they were mostly sergeants or one of the officers. You always had an officer with you when you went to the field.
What was the food situation, the actual Army food situation in the field, and then like at camp? How was that?
Well, at camp it was good food. The cook could cook it, and you got a variety of foods, and you get steaks every once in a while, chicken and noodles, my wife, when she was down there, the cooks had the noodles out on the table, and she thought it was going to be chocolate chip cookies. The flies was on it. The guy that was supposed to keep the flies off fell down on his job. He didn't get that. But we didn't throw the noodles away, I'll tell you that.
Just rinse them off and,
Yeah.
and eat. Right? So what was the field ration like? Can you explain the field ration while you're down there?
Well, we didn't have fuel rations until the maneuvers.
Do you remember any, like, the cooks coming out with their trucks and any of their gear when you were training down in Claiborne?
Well, they would when they could, yes. They was on train just like we was. They had to cook in the field, and then we took turns going up getting our meal from them. But they had to train just like we did. About all they had was a big truck, 6x6 or whatever they called them, and they had one or two, and they had stoves, and then they had their pots and pans and stuff. You know, they were like this, that wide, and about that deep. They could make about anything you wanted in them. And they made their own syrup. And I had to go get my brother-in-law one time. He got a little too tipsy and tipped the syrup for breakfast for pancakes over, and the mess sergeant hollered for me to come get him before he killed him. So he had to make another pan of syrup. But everybody knew what to take care of everybody, you know. He knew who to call when whoever it was in trouble.
So your mess boys, the mess cook and the cooks, they were all pretty good to you?
Yes, they were. We had good cooks. Lamadou was the mess sergeant, and Scotty was one of the cooks, and I cannot remember. He had two others. Yesterday I told you I couldn't remember. One of them was an old regular Army cook, and he wasn't that good, but he was a cook. Yeah. And the other one was a Swede. I can't remember sure his name, but he was a big Swede, and he took care of the pies and cakes and stuff like that, and all the sweets. It was his turn. Of course, they all did every different things, you know, at different times. If they needed help somewhere, they did it. And, of course, in the evening, after we'd come in, if I didn't have nothing to do, I'd go over and help on the KP, peel potatoes or something, just for something to do, you know. When he got our ball team, they was trying to figure out who you want for the manager. I said Lamadou. Well, Lamadou, that blowed him up, you know. He liked that deal. So, but then you could, if you played ball for him, you could sneak in and have a drink of lemonade or something during the day. Oh yeah, you had coffee. You wanted it.
They make it right there out in the field and
get
it to you? I seen them, we seen pictures of them putting them in those big pots and even in those like trash cans. Did you ever see anything like that?
Yeah.
Where they just ladle it out to you?
Yeah. And the trash cans, they even got to where they throw the sea ration cans in there, and they knew about how long they could figure them in there before they'd blow up, you know. And that's the way you'd get them sea rations hot. You'd have boiling water or something, and they'd fish them out of there for you.
You told me a story, a funny story yesterday. It had to do with a cottonmouth snake.
We were just going to go to the lake for swimming. They told us that snakes can't bite you in the water, but don't you believe that? But anyway, we were going to go swimming, though, and the column stopped. We couldn't figure out why it stopped. Finally, it went on after, 15 minutes or so, you know. And when we got up there, they had caught a cottonmouth that it had a stick tied in its mouth, and it was about like that the cottonmouth was. And they always told you to carry razor blade in the first pouch, and wear your leggings. The snake can't bite through your leggings, but if you do get caught, you had the razor blade to cut it and get the blood out of it. And my brother-in-law was in there. He said, "You seen that snake?" And he said, "Yeah, man." He said, "That son of a gun would take leg and all." so the lieutenant said, "Fall in." We had to leave. We left it there. We didn't. It wasn't the one that killed it. But they did. One of the kids did get bit by a snake while it was not our company, one of the other companies. And they got him out of there real quick, and I don't know what, they took him back to medics, I suppose.
So what other critters did you encounter at Claiborne? Claiborne critters.
Snakes and armadillos, or whatever they call it, armadillos.
Tell me the funny story about the armadillo.
Well, we had one as a pet. That's all you could, this Whitaker I was telling you about was laying out in the sun, was bare-chested, and the rest of us was playing ball or doing something, I don't know what it was. We was around there. And the armadillo got loose and run right across his chest, and he went in the air a good 3 foot, just straight up when he come out there. He was something else, I'll tell you.
So you guys had a different experience down there in Louisiana.
Yeah.
Than up here training in Des Moines. So.
Well, my wife was down there. They had a division parade. It started in the morning, and it was going till past noon. There was still guys going by the review stand. I mean, it was from everybody. This was division, both 133rd and 105th Artillery. They had all of them there, and it lasted way past noon. I don't remember. Of course, once I went by, we didn't go back. I don't remember where we did go, but I'm sure we just went somewhere and out of sight.
Can you talk about the Louisiana Maneuvers a little bit?
Well, they were just tough, that's all. You just went to the field, and like you say, I couldn't remember 3 months is what we was out, something like that. Well, it was just like anything else. We're going to take a town or whatever it is, and we went to De Ryder, and the others I can't remember. And you go out and go through this maneuver to take this down, or you go back and going to take this. Ain't no hills down there, swamps, but no hills. And we got as far as Beaumont, Texas. We crossed and got into Texas, but we didn't stay there long. We come right back into Louisiana again. And it kind of, if I remember correctly, it kind of went like this and then come back up on this other side, But it was, you didn't do it in a day. This is 3 months it took us to do all that. Well, they divided up. Probably the 133rd was the Red Army, or we was, and the other one was the Blue Army. You had bands on so they could tell who you was and stuff.
So you said the C rations, you started seeing those during the maneuvers.
Yes.
What did you think about them things?
Well, I didn't think too much of any of it, but it was food. And I've always, like I say, I come out of the hard times. I made sure I had food. So I always liked the meat and beans. And if you went through a garden and get an onion or tomato and cut her up and put her in there, that just spiced her up that much. And the meat and vegetable stew was nothing but carrots and gristle. And you couldn't hardly even eat them, but if you're starving, you will. And then the hash, that was one you could eat the longest. What you do is poke a hole in it, throw it in the bonfire, and just let it burn all around, and then take the top off and eat the center out of it. There was guys that got sick; they couldn't eat them no more. They just couldn't do it. And
how do you make pancakes out of a C ration?
You take the biscuits that was in there, and in your can, in your sea rations, you got a can of wet, a can of dry. That was what you got. The wet was either the meat and beans and the beef stew or the other, and then you always got the dry one. It had the biscuits and a little container of coffee and 3 hard candy, just rock candy, hard candy. Well, you take that candy, keep it separated so you know what you want, strawberries, lemons, or whatever, you know. And you make the syrup out of that, and you take those biscuits and put them in the water, and they swell up, and then you take them out of there and put them in the pan with the syrup you'd made, or put them on your plate and pour the syrup on them, and then they'd swell out. They wasn't quite big as a pancake, but that's how we made pancakes. We even made cakes out of them for somebody's birthday. Just do something. Everybody contributes some of them. Make a big cake about like that out of it. All you had was your blanket or your bedroll, and had a pup tent. That was the canvas that was on the outside. I didn't see any here.
How did that pup tent work, Fred?
2 men. He carried one and you carried one. 2 men to a tent. You put them halves together, make the tent. We each had one of us had a pole for the front, one for the back. And you had stakes, but we just used whatever we could find really to make stakes, stick it out, and then kind of put a little trench around it so the water would run away instead of running in on your bed. So, and I had one fellow in my squad, Whitaker, and he always would pitch a tent with me. And then next morning he was always hollering because I had him pushed out of the tent and all the covers, and he's never going to pitch a tent with me again. And he did through the whole war. Yeah, so right with me.
And what was his name?
Leon Whitaker.
Leon Whitaker.
He was originally from Sheraton, I think, but I met him here. He went to East High School, so he was in Des Moines by then.
Did you guys train on other weapons?
Yes, we did. I had a grenade launcher on my... I had a sheet. I don't know whether my son got it or whether it's in the bank box, but it showed what I was qualified on. I was qualified on about anything you could think of, and you just took a test on it, did it, and that's, if you qualified, you got a marker.
Now you said you had a grenade launcher on your rifle. Was it the bolt action?
Yes, it was an 03.
The 03?
Yeah.
So I've heard stories that the squad leaders in each squad, they had the bolt action rifle with the grenade launchers.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So you trained on the 03 bolt action rifle.
Yeah.
Did you train on the M1 rifle?
No, I never had an M1. Over in North Africa, I didn't want them to get sand in them, though. It wouldn't work. You had to tear it down. That old bolt action, you put your foot on it and close it, you could shoot it. We had an old 45 revolver for a while. I could handle that pretty good. My hand was little, short, and I couldn't get a stock around the stock for the 45 automatic. I just couldn't hold it that good. I carried the revolver for a while, then they took them away from us and give us that 01, 03, and I guess they didn't want nobody but officers having a pistol.
So after the Louisiana Maneuvers, did you think it was getting you guys ready? How did you guys feel about it?
Well, when we went down there, we were supposed to stay for 12 months. Well, then while we was there, they raised it to 18 months, so they kept us right there. They knew what was coming. We didn't, but they did. Well, they didn't know the Japanese were going to bomb Pearl Harbor. But we was out in the field when that happened, and we were coming in. It was in the evening, and a runner come out from headquarters and told us the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. So we figured we was going south, but we didn't. They kept us right where he was going to take us in the first place. When we came back, got back to camp and everything, was then they had decided the 133rd, they took people out of 168th and built them up to what they're supposed to be, fighting strength. And then they went to Fort Dix before we did. We loaded all their stuff on the train, their weapons and everything that they, their bags they couldn't take and stuff. Then we spent Christmas in Louisiana. They had, like the chaplain had a little ceremony. You go over there and sing carols with him and stuff like that. And Roger Rose, he was I don't know whether he was a corporal or not, but eventually he was. But anyway, he'd went to town, somewhere down there in Louisiana, and had the tattooed on his arm, that insignia you had up there. Had the rainbow and everything, and had
the regimental
crest? Had it tattooed on his arm, so he got in trouble over that.
What soldier was that?
Roger Rose was his name.
Roger Rose. Mm-hmm. And he was in your
in
your company D?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, we did the same thing for ourselves we did for the 133rd. We loaded all of our stuff on the train, our bags and and all our equipment and our trucks. We had 3/4 ton pickups we had, and of course cooks had their big truck and stuff. But it loaded it all up, and then next thing you know, they got the train pulled right into the camp now. The shades was down on the cars. You couldn't see nothing or anything else. And that's when we had to get rid of all of our insignias and everything. And then New Year's, we was in Fort Dix, New Jersey.
Do you remember what the base was, the fort was like when you got there?
Oh, it was, in the wintertime, the ground was froze and it spit snow once in a while, but I don't remember having any hard storm. And we'd go out in the field there, like I was telling you the other day, and we was out there, I don't know, we was having a session or drilling something. Anyway, a rabbit come out of the brush down there, and we all took out after the rabbit. We was going to have rabbit for supper. And the colonel come by, and of course the officer had to go to him, and he said, well, they're getting more exercise doing that than they are what we was doing, so he didn't say no more. But we never did get the rabbits.
Did you guys learn there at Fort Dix where you were going, or did they just say, hey, go over here, get on the ships? They
didn't tell you where you was going till the day you went. Well, we went on train at the Brooklyn Navy Yards, and then I'm sure you've seen it, a lot of pictures. First sergeant standing up there at the head of the plank, and when you called your name off, you went up the plank, and then you had somebody up there telling you where to go for your rooms, or where it was.
Did you have all your gear? How was that packed?
Well, you carried your pack, but you're small one. You didn't carry the bedrolls or anything. They come later anyway. We had barracks bags. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what were they like?
Oh, they were just a big old blue bag. Most of them was drawstrings. He just had one bag. That's all. And that's where you kept all your clean clothes and your dirty ones. You'd take them off because you didn't have no other place. You just kind of slide them over one side. You could remember which ones was dirty and which ones wasn't. April's when we left. April 29th, 1942. Well, we left the harbor at night. We got on board and left at night. And like I told you before, we went to Nova Scotia and picked up somebody, I don't know who it was, and you was telling me today there was 2 of those ships. Well, it's dark, I wasn't paying no attention, you know, but I knew we went and stopped. The rest of them was going out in the harbor.
Do you remember what the ship's name was that you rode over?
Santa Rosa.
Santa Rosa? And your whole company was on Santa Rosa. Was there other
I think the whole battalion. I think the whole battalion was on there, I'm pretty sure. Well, I know it was, because that's why they couldn't serve 3 meals. It was hot. We were below deck, and it was so hot, and they were cutting all the air vents they could on that come through there, but it still wasn't enough. You just had canvas, and the bunks, they would just build up in a stack along, you know, so many, I can't remember how many was in a pile. But you always kept the guys that was seasick below, because you didn't want to throw them up, throwing up above you, so yeah. We put him in the low bunk if you didn't get seasick, which I never did. It never bothered me one bit. I could have sailed forever. And even when we got into Scotland and we slept in the helmet, boy, them big ships, even, you know, they just go over so easy and come back so easy. Hell, just like rocking you to sleep for me. I didn't have no problem with any of it. They finally let us come out and sleep in the cafeteria or the mess hall on the ship because it's too hot down there and they couldn't get enough air down. Of course,
did they ever let you go up on deck?
That's what I mean.
Okay.
We'd come up out of there. We had to get up out of the mess hall, you know, for breakfast, but we could stay on deck for a while. And of course, we could get on the guns, because we knew the machine guns and stuff. Of course, back there, the ships had the 30 calibers before they had the 50 too, you know. But anyway, we could get on the crew, but if anything happened, we had to get off. And the regular crew that was on there, you know, they had like artillery guys to shoot those guns and stuff. But we'd go up there. If you got up there, then you could get into the galley to eat with the guys, the sailors. Much better food than what you're going to get down below. So we always had something to get into. And we landed in Belfast, Ireland on May the 12th. It was my wife's birthday.
Do you remember if it was day or night when you pulled in?
It was daytime.
And then how long did it take you guys to get off the ship?
Not very long. You don't have no trouble getting off. They don't even count you going off. Coming in they do, but from there we trained to Enniskillen, which was quite a ride, but it was kind of comical. When we was on the train ride, all these people that see us going by was giving us this sign. We was trying to figure out what was going to cost us $2. It was the victory sign they was giving us.
What part was that in Northern Ireland?
Yeah.
It was in Northern Ireland?
Yeah. You know, at the time, you have Southern Ireland and Northern Ireland. And you couldn't go to Southern Ireland. You couldn't get across the border. You know, they had border patrols and stuff there. And they couldn't come to Northern Islands. Just like I said about anything else, when you go to Ireland and the people have an accent, you learn it. You don't do nothing about it, you know, that's their way. You just treat them like people, and they treat you that way. I could understand the Italians better than I could the English, to tell you the truth. They talk so fast and slur the words, you can't even tell what they're saying. It takes you a while to figure that out.
There was a switch over sometime in Ireland where you guys got a new general, and his name was Ryder.
Ryder, yeah.
That's who you remember?
Yeah, I remember Ryder pretty good.
And then tell me where you went.
Went to Enniskillen. We got off the train, and trucks took us to the camp that was around that lake where we stayed. And you had billets. And course, the time we was there was mostly daylight. You could be playing softball at 12 o'clock at night, but you learned you just go in the billets and shut the shutters on the windows, and it was dark in there, and you could sleep. So it didn't bother you. You could always sleep. You was tired enough. You didn't. Guys that couldn't sleep, I couldn't figure that out, but.
Now, you said the billets, were they made of wood or were they?
Metal.
Okay.
Okay, and they had bunks in it. And strung down one side, on the other side. I don't know how many it held, 30 or 40 probably, all total. And these billets was set, along, were like a company. Well, the training there was pretty much standard like we trained any place else, in the States. You'd go out and you'd listen to a nomenclature of a machine gun or something, or you'd go out and put the guns in action and take them out so you could do it the fastest. You learn how to tear them down, put them back together, you change the barrel, and it had so many notches on it, you had to remember. Of course, in real life, if you was firing a machine gun, the barrel was hot. You had to, There's another thing. You see these things and they shoot these machine guns like crazy. You didn't do that. You set it in bursts. But you had 4 guns synchronized at certain heights, and you never get above the height of a man. And you'd shoot burst, and it's your turn again. And you just shoot, 4, 5, 6, whatever. So you didn't burn the barrel up, because then it wasn't that much of a job to put a barrel on, but it was if it was hot.
Do you remember King George and Queen Elizabeth visiting Northern Ireland?
Yes. Somebody did. I couldn't remember who it was. But we had to go to a different area when they were there, and they just more or less examined the troops,
Were you guys part of that display?
Yeah, it was all there, the whole camp. She just reviewed. I don't know whether we marched by or what, but we were all in certain groups and groomed the best we could. They were, like I say, I couldn't remember who it was, but I guess the Queen was there. Well, that's where the Americans formed the Rangers to be like the commandos. The British had the commandos already, and they wanted men to go to make a company, and they'd ask anybody that wanted to go as the Rangers, they could go. A few of them went, the rest of them they just picked, you, and you. So they made the Rangers, and they went to Scotland, I think. I think they went right to Scotland and took their training. After they did that, that's when, I don't know how long after, we went to Scotland.
When you say we,
the group, the company, the whole battalion, the whole shot,
so the whole 168th went?
Yeah, but it was just a short jaunt on the ship. It was a U.S. Grant, I'm pretty sure, that took us. And my wife's brother was in the Navy, and he was on the U.S. Grant, but I don't know whether it was the same ship or not. I never seen him, if he was on there, but later he said he was on the U.S. Grant. Inveraray, Scotland, and we got off board the ship at the dock there. He had a big dock, and we got off of there, and we had billets then on land. Our training there was a week or 2. He was on land, and the other outfits was on board ship. The ship was out in the harbor. Okay, well, they would sound the alarm, and the ones that was on board ship would get in the boats, the landing crafts out there, and the ones on the ground would go to the dock where you got off, and the little assault boats would come there. So many men in a boat. I don't know, it was 14 or something. They had wooden boats back then with the sides. It was down each side and one right down the middle. And you didn't have the open front. You had to get up on the side and run and jump off the front. Well, anyway, the ones on the board ship would get on out there, and the ones on the land, the little boats would come by, and we'd filter into them. They'd all rendezvous out there in the bay, and then at a certain time we'd take off the whole thing, assault this piece of ground, and take a mountain that was there, and that was the exercise for the day. You had to do it in so much time. You only had so much time. And then you get to the top, that's when you'd get a sandwich to go back to the camp on. You had that old bully beef, and they had peanut butter and jelly, and they had a cheese. I'd always take the bully beef, because I could eat a sandwich of that and drink a half canteen. I could walk for miles, never bothered me a bit. And other guys would be falling out like flies on the side. And like I say, I always got the bully beef ones, and you'd walk a mile and run a mile, walk a mile and run a mile. You get back to camp, and then before you was dismissed, you had to run the obstacle course. Then you was dismissed to go to your billet. I can't remember much of any of it. It had everything. The wall was the hardest. You know, you had to run, jump, get the wall. I could do that at that time. I weighed about 100 pounds. I could jump pretty good.
Did they have any like climbing things that you had to do?
Yeah, you had that, rope ladders. Yeah, you had all that. And they had them on the ship when you got off of them. Yeah, and I was small. My rifle was always banging my helmet. I was afraid of either going to lose my rifle or my helmet, one, but I'd make it down there somehow and get in. But it was a mess, I'll tell you. Yeah, we carried the machine guns, but I don't remember putting one on board ship.
Did you ever have them during those assaults? Do you remember?
No, I don't. I don't think so. I just can't remember. I'm sure somebody had them, but I just can't remember.
Did this over and over?
Over and over and over, yeah.
The whole time you were there?
I think it was 2 weeks he was on ground, 2 weeks he was on board ship.
Who ran the amphibious commando school that you went to in Scotland?
I have no idea.
Do you remember?
No, you had your officer just like we always had, and we didn't get any higher than company, you know. When you're out on the ship, you had a long table, and 14 men to a table, you know, 7 on each side, and you had your pots and pans and stuff, and you had to go to the galley, and they would give you enough food for 14 men. And you had to go back up there and divide it up. The food was awful. They tried to feed me tripe one night, and I couldn't do it. Stewed tripe. If you want something, try it one of these days.
I'll take your word for it.
You bet. And then at night, you had to sleep in the hammock. Well, they crisscrossed them hammocks so they could get 14 of them in. And that was chaos, I'll tell you. Them guys would get in there and roll over and out they'd come. I get a big bag in mine, so I was dang near on the table anyway. But that's the only way you can stay in them. You sure didn't roll over at night, I'll tell you.
Tell me about the Scottish people versus the
They were
Irish.
much more, they had a sense of humor. They were good at that, the Scots were. And we really didn't have no trouble with them. And you didn't go in there like you were going to whip the world or you got in trouble.
The Brits or the Scots, were they running the camp? Do you remember?
I can't remember now. Actually, they were probably around there. I know they were because they'd be in the PX at night. They called them naffies. instead of PA. It had that old black mirror, but it was better than nothing, I guess. So I couldn't hardly hack it. The bartender, you had to ask for the toilet paper. You couldn't. They wouldn't leave it in the toilets because people didn't have any at home. They'd take it, go. So you had to ask the bartender for paper if you needed it. And it was over that old brown hard paper, and he'd take off a bunch and put it in his hands and roll it around. And he'd say, "Is that soft enough yet?" He'd give it to. Finally, the Army got to giving us a paper in a package. You could put it in your back pocket,
You finish up with the amphibious and base commando school in Inveraray. Where did you go from there?
We left there and went to Barrhead, Scotland, and that's outside of Glasgow. We was there at Barrhead, and they decided the community, they had a community hall, and we turned it into a dance hall. They'd have the young women that was around there come there, and then we'd dance at the dance. No liquor or anything, just a community center. And we used to do that. That was about all the entertainment you had from there, from the mud hole. But and then you could get a pass to go to Glasgow, and that's where the big town was. We just did that and stayed there, I can't remember, a month, 2 months, whatever it was after the training. It was a pretty good town. If you had somebody in your squad that didn't show up or anything, you got a pass to go look for him. Well, they had a NAFI on that base there. They had a canteen they had. Well, it was like a nightclub in there, Me and Mark Gillingham, he's a great big tall kid from West Virginia. He had one and I had one. It looked like Mutt and Jeff when you're going through there. We went in there and, we started having a drink or two because, and who comes in? Our captain and the colonel. And they're over at that table. I know they seen us. And I said to Mark, "We got to do something." I said, "They know we're here." So I concocted the story. I said, "We'll go over and I'll tell them that we're here because we figured if they were loose, they'd come here for the drinks at the same place we did so we could catch them." So that's what I told him. Went over there and gave him a big highball, and I told him. He said, "Yeah." I said, that sounds the reason. And we left. But he knew we was drunk. He says, we wasn't going to look for nobody. We went to town.
You guys got all decked out in your Class A.
Oh, that was Barrhead, Scotland.
Oh, and the button?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, they had to... First sergeant said I couldn't have a pass, me or Ryerson, either one, because he was, I don't know, they're supposed to get some shots or something, I don't know, but Conaway, he was the captain. He always come to me at night. He only had the one lung, and he'd be coughing. I could hear him coming, and I always kept a half pint or a pint of whiskey. Mostly for him and for me in camp. But anyway, he come down there and get a couple shots of whiskey and then he settled him down, So I had no problem getting a pass. Anyway, me and him dressed all up. Well, we got our clothes, wool is what it was, and had the jacket like the one over there, all the good stuff. And we had somebody carry us from the company out to where the blacktop was, where we didn't get our shoes dirty or anything. And we walking out the gate to go to Glasgow. And command car come wheeling up to come in and stop and waved us over. And here was this colonel. I'm pretty sure he was. He wasn't too, but anyway, he waved us over, and we thought, now what? we got this far. He'd gone. He got to Glasgow yet, and he said, "I just wanted to tell you how nice you guys look, and clean clothes and all this, all that mud, you know." And we'd put sand in our mess kit to make an iron, warm sand, so we get a cleat in our pants, you know. Just wanted to tell you how nice you look. And he said, a few words, and we give him a highball. And Ryerson had one button on his coat that wasn't there, and that's what we was afraid he was pulling us over for. But we got out of there.
You're at Glasgow. Now take me through what happens between Glasgow and you guys learning that you're going to make the invasion to North Africa, Operation Torch.
We didn't learn nothing. I can't remember whether when we left, we went down to the docks in Glasgow and got on board ship. The Winchester Castle was the name of it. And we sailed on that ship from Glasgow to one of the British ports. We stayed right on board ship. We stayed there. They had them big cables going up in the air with the balloons on them, so the aircraft couldn't dive bomb there. They had them all out there, and we stayed right there on that ship. I don't know how many days. Somebody got to town, or got somebody to go down and got some fish hooks, and so we get some twine. And we opened the porthole, and we was fishing. We catch them old crubby fish that we couldn't eat them or anything, you know. And then we'd go up on deck, take them up there and throw them in there and watch the seagulls dive and grab them. That was our entertainment. And then, first thing we know, at night, we only traveled at night. They had the convoy made up and took off for North Africa. It took us a long time to go because we only traveled at night. In the daytime, they spread out, you know, different ways, and then they convoy back at night and go. And when we was going over North Africa, we got on the gun cruise, and I had a couple guns in my section.
When did they tell you it was going to be North Africa? Was it after you left, or was it right before you guys left?
They don't tell you nothing. You just know you're going.
Right.
Maybe they would say, you know, some town or something, but when you're going to make an invasion, they didn't tell you nothing. And we sailed, like I say, at night. The first light I'd seen was Straits of Gibraltar. It was dark on the broad rock side. Spain was on the other side. It had lights. Some little vessel come out of the port when we was going through, and two British gunboats just picked him up. I don't know where they took him, but that was the last we seen of him. They probably took him right back to port somewhere, or on the Moroccan side. But and then we went through the strait, and that's when you divided up where you was going to go to make the invasion. Some of them Morocco, some of them here. And we went to Algiers, right outside Algiers. The only good thing about that was the morning we got up before daylight because we were going to take the beach by daylight, and they was going to feed you breakfast. Well, the British was always had rum. They always had that rum. Well, the morning we was going to make the invasion, they give you a shot of rum in your mess kit. Well, I got one in front of me that didn't drink and one behind me. I got the one in front of me and I got mine, but I passed on that other one. I couldn't make that one because they just put it in the canteen. It wasn't more than a shot, you know. I had it all planned out where I would, but I didn't quite make it. So when we left there, I had no problem. I was going down the rope ladder, fighting the helmet and the thing again, and getting in them damn boats. So then they rendezvoused, and then we took off. We landed at Fort Sidi Firu, and we were lucky. The French had the British already, the officers, locked up somewhere. And they had the French Foreign Legion out chasing somebody else somewhere. They wasn't there. So we got through there pretty good. And then we had a little battle at LBR. It was right outside of Algiers. Well, we didn't. The rifle company took care of it before we ever got there. And, well, we had to hold up till they had it. But anyway, and then we took the harbor. We went right down past the French billets, and they had their fort built up, and we was trading cigarettes for wine right out in a great big old park, city park. They had some dumb officer that was telling them, put your arms down, and they were saying, no, we're friendly, you know, we're with you. And we had a little lieutenant, he come by and he told us, don't shoot. No matter what, don't shoot, because it's just, he knew what the problem was. That's how I found out. And so finally, they got a hold of somebody big enough. It wasn't Clark, I don't suppose, but him and de Gaulle had been in there the day before. But whoever the was, he said, no, they were right. They keep their weapons. Well, we got up out of the park, went back out around the bay, around the mountains or the hills, and more hills there, out around. So in case paratroopers come in. And then after we did that, here come the British in and took over the fort. They got all the goodies, and we did all the work. And that's the way it went. They'd get the goodie, and we'd get the work.
So you guys were fighting under the British command at the
Yes.
time?
Yes.
What did you think about that, Fred?
I didn't think very much of it, to tell you the truth. All we did was they'd just run us in and we'd fight like hell for a while, and then they'd find another hot spot and run us down there and we'd fight. We very seldom ever had a front.
Was the whole division there, or was it just a little bit of you guys, Fred?
No, the whole battalion was there anyway, I'm sure. And I can't remember. I'm sure there was more than that there.
But there was no front. They just used
No.
you here and there.
Yeah.
Podgy.
Yeah.
Sanid Station? Sanid Station?
Yeah, Tebessa, wasn't it?
Yeah, right around Tebessa. Yeah. Take me through that.
We was riding on trucks, trying to get into Saned. Well, the Stuka dive bombers wasn't very far away. They had an air base somewhere, and they'd come over and strafe and bomb and carry on. We'd get off the trucks and run to safety. We'd get off the trucks and get away from them, and then they'd holler, get back on the vehicle, get back on the vehicle. So you get back on, you'd drive maybe, I don't know how many yards, a block at the most, and here they'd come again. You'd bail off, and the first one through there hit my truck, went right through the side of the vehicle, and I had them eggs in that can down there, and well, I would buy eggs wherever I could find them or trade for them, at the Arabs, and I had that can, and I had straw in it, and put eggs in the straw, and eggs in straw, and the first shell went right through that truck and right through my can of eggs. I was more worried about the eggs than I was the truck, because they did. They brought another truck up, we took our stuff off, put it in that one, and finally, somebody had sense enough to say, get the trucks out of here, get the vehicles out, so they left. Well, that Stuka divers down there, they didn't come back. So once they got out of there, and we fought for Saned, which we were supposed to ride through, I don't know, 2 days, something like that, 2 or 3, I can't remember. And you always had white underclothes. Well, that worked fine till you got in combat, and if you washed them any time and hung them out, it was just like giving the Air Corps a signal where you was at. So the next thing you know, everything come back out, all the underwear and everything was that olive drab color.
Where was that at?
That was at Saned, I think.
Tell me about that one.
Well, I fell head to head with, I called him Slick Farr. I don't remember what his first name was. He was from Kentucky or somewhere. And I would dig out to get my shoulders and head down, and he'd move forward. He did it twice, and I told him I was going to hit him in the head with a trenching tool I had if he made another move, and he didn't come no more. I said, oh, yeah. But he said, I'm bigger than you. I said, I don't care. They're shooting me just like they are you. Nobody, big didn't make no difference.
Was he D Company?
Yeah, he's one of the guys in the squad. He was always, you go up at night to get your rations when you could. And he was always one that wait and wait and wait, see whether there's anything left or he could get some more rations. And I always ate good, but I just, whatever they fixed, I ate it, and that was it. I didn't worry about no more food or nothing, until I was in a position where I could, like I say, get eggs or something, then I would. Okay, we got left as a rear guard. And they had the billets down there where the French was. We went down, sent one down, guy, and he got a bottle of wine, come back, and we was there, and we had a big old German soldier in my outfit. Bill Schutte was his name, and he didn't drink or anything. And so I said, well, Bill, you just will have a shot of this wine. And he took a sip of the wine, and he had a real high voice. My, oh my, he said. He wanted more of that. But anyway, we made him set up. Romel and them coming back. That was our job when we left the rear guard. And we made him set up, and it was lobbing shells. And we got in a culvert. We didn't know it was a culvert at first. It was kind of built up on the outside. You had to go down in a ways and then go in. And he had a water trough-like deal come down out of the mountain along on the one side. Well, we tried to make it over that thing. Yeah, that was the best protection we had. From then on, we was on our own. We tried it, and it fired, and we'd go back. Did that, and about the third time, old Whitaker, my sidekick, was pulling on my gun. He said, give me my gun. I said, that's not your gun, it's mine. See the grenade launcher on it? Well, get it out of my belly, he said. He said, get around and see what's in there so we can't get any farther. I said, okay. I said, you could hold my gun until I get it turned around. So I got turned around, looked, and that culvert was full of gas cans. I don't know whether it was full or whether it wasn't. But the next time we made it over that thing, and then we walked forever and then run into an air base, ours. Well, they took everything they could. Then what was left, they'd come back and strafe it, and blow it up. And then when they'd leave, then the Germans would come and do it. They was bombing it too. So we had to move in between runs. We was going out through it, and we got it going by it. Finally, we come to an Arab village. It was just tents, all it was. And he had a big old skin thing, I don't know what it was, full of water. Hell, the officer was saying, don't drink the water, don't drink. Hell, we all went over and filled our canteen. We had them tablets put in there. I doubt if we even sewed any of them in, because we was thirsty. And we got through by them and come back to kind of a plateau. The range of mountains was further. And we got down that plateau, and the damn French was up there, and they started shooting at us. So we was pinned down out there for a while, not too long, but pinned down out there. Finally, somebody got to the French and told them who it was. Then they sent trucks out to pick us up. Well, I happened to be a black guy driving the truck. I said, boy, you look like an angel to me, and you ought to hurt him. He went into hysterics. But anyway, I was riding, I wasn't walking. Got us back to, I don't know whether it was Fonduke or not. I can't remember where we got back to. Anyway, it was dark. We all laid down to sleep, and because we'd taken the place, and got up the next morning, and there was a...
Oh, like a shelter?
Yeah, a cave. It had a cave, and it had the door on it.
Oh,
and the next morning, when we all woke up, Germans come out of the cave. They was sleeping in the cave all night. We captured, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 of them. I don't remember how many it was. Slept all night with them and then got... I tell you, war's crazy. You know, anything can happen. And it's comical afterwards. We didn't. We give them to the rifle company. We didn't want to mess with them anyway. So that's how we took Sened.
Was it Kasserine next?
We went back. Like I say, we took Sened. Then we went back to some bivouac area somewhere. I suppose the battalion commanders or somebody couldn't decide which they wanted us to go or one of the other battalions. Well, we'd already been fought in Sened stuff, and the others didn't get in. So they wanted to take them, some wanted to take us. But he kept saying, well, you're going to go. And no, you're not going to go. Well, you're going to go. No, you're not. Well, we were just running back and forth, getting it on the truck and getting off. And finally, they said, no, they're going to take the other battalion, but we have to give them our guns. And I was taking the machine gun off the tripod on the truck, and I was smiling because I didn't have to go into battle, and it chipped my tooth. It come up and hit me, chipped my tooth. So that's how I got out of it. And then the 3rd Battalion went, and they got slaughtered in there. But anyway, then we went back to a staging area of some kind, and that's when they took the non-coms out of our company and put them in the other company and got replacements. And then we went from there back to City Bella Biz, back towards Casablanca. And that's where, if you knew how to drive, you got the second seat. The driver got his seat, and the other. And I didn't know how to drive when we started, but when we got there, I was doing pretty good at it. But I wasn't going to ride back on them hard wooden seats if I could get that other one. And then we got the grapes off that poor old guy with his flatbed. Pull up there and get a basket of grapes, go around him, and the next truck could do the same thing. When we got to the bivouac back area, he just had that one back row is all he had on his truck. And the officer come around and said, hey, you guys got grapes, you better get rid of them, because that guy's coming, he's madder than hell, and he's got one of the big wheels with him.
Do you remember the Fondue Pass?
We sat up there, and I think that's where the tanks come in, but it was a ravine they could come down, and we was around the ravine. And we could keep the tank shut up so he couldn't see what, or just the slots is all he had. Finally, he went out and he turned around and he got back, and we left. He had that evening, one of the Stevens boys, he got killed, and kept him right up behind my gun emplacement. And boy, I tell you, that wasn't a good sight, and they kept him there till morning so they could take him on back.
Do you remember his first name, Fred?
No, one of them was Burdett. That's the only one I can remember, but I don't know whether that was him or not. No, he wasn't. It wasn't our company. He was a rifleman.
Okay, so he was from one of the other companies.
Yeah, and went for Hill 609. There was a few before. I think it was a 407, but it wasn't big enough to get any recognition. That's the way it always was. You fight real hard on something else, and then it was something big when they got the whole division or the whole battalion into it. Well, then it got recognized. Otherwise, you've been fighting all week and it wasn't even getting recognized. We was trying to take that hill and we got pinned down. And so me and Whitaker fell behind this big old rock, and I opened my mail I'd got that early morning, and Marie had bought furniture, and I said, hell, ain't no sense in me going home, my money's gone anyway.
Where was that at?
Hell, I don't know what battle it was. I cannot.
Was it in North Africa or
Yeah,
Italy?
I think it was in North Africa. You know, they always thought you get put in reserve. Oh man, you're off the line. All you do when you go in reserve, you're either battalion reserve or whatever, you know, company reserve.
Yeah.
But all you do, you're just waiting till somebody hits the hot spot. They can't take it, then that's where you go. That's the reserve. So the reserve wasn't all that good sometimes. Well, we was going trying to take Hill 609, and we was assigned to a rifle company, and the other one was the other one company. But anyway, we were making the attack, and the rifle company was ahead of us, and I seen a shell went off, and the first sergeant of the rifle company, I seen him take off running, and then we were still going forward, and then another one went off ahead of us, but just about that time, it come to me, they're not making craters, so it has to be grenades. You know, it wasn't mortars. I thought it was mortars. It had to be grenades, but it was too late. The third one lit right between me and the gunner. He got hit, and so did I.
What was his name?
Gene Brown. And he got hit in the face, and I went, oh, he said, I'm hit. The concussion knocked us over, but when he said, I'm hit, I run and got him. And that's when we went down into the wadi, a little creek bed, and there was our lieutenant that we'd got a couple days before, shot right through the arm, the muscle in the arm. And he said, well, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, you're hurt. He said, yeah. I said, well, then go to the medics where you belong. He said, well, who will run the company? I said, well, Turner's up there, Finnerty's up there. I said, we've run this company without an officer for years now, you know. Well, I don't know. I said, well, you make up your mind. I mean, Gene's going to the first aid station. So I took Gene, and we started back. And we got a ride in a Jeep. The Air Corps observers, their batteries went dead. They always had a habit of doing that when you was in a battle. And so he took us back, and we got off at the station. It was in a kind of another little wadi deal. And the officer and the sergeant come down, and they tagged you when you went in. You know, as soon as you got there, an aid man got your name, number, and stuff, put tag on you. Then the medical officer would come with the sergeant, and Gene was ahead of me, and he wiped his face off with a wet sponge and said, sign him up for a Purple Heart and send him back up on the line tonight. I thought, oh, Christ. But I was tickled that Gene wasn't hurt any worse, you know. And because first thing I asked him, can you see? And he said, yes. Well, I knew that. But anyway, then he came to me, rolled me over, and wiped me off. He said, make this man a litter case and send him back. I could have kissed him right there. Because I was going off the line. There's still a piece of shrapnel there. The chiropractor I was going to, took an x-ray, and my whole body, you know, he was having trouble. And he said, well, you still got shrapnel in that guy. I didn't know it. The ambulance drivers come up with their gurneys to pick people up. They couldn't drive up to where we was at because they were shooting on the road. So I asked them if they had room for me in the ambulance, and they said, well, yeah, but you can't walk. And I said, hell, I can. I walk here. I can walk down there. So they said, well, don't you let anybody know you walked. And they put me in the ambulance, and they took me back to British first aid. And then the British looked at me, and they sent me to the evacuation hospital, the big hospital. You always carried in combat one of those candy bars they had that would last you a week, supposedly.
Was that the D ration?
No, that was just separate. That was just a separate deal. It was just real hard chocolate candy. I had one in my pocket. I kept it, but my shirt pocket, and I had my billfold in the other pocket. And and then when I got hit, it took me back to the medics. I got through our medics and then through the British medics and got back to the evacuation hospital or whatever they called it. They took all my clothes and took my chocolate bar. And I hadn't eaten. They gave me some blood. I know they gave me a pint. I don't know whether they gave me any more or not. But anyway, they took all that, and then that was in pre-op, they called it, and got me ready for operation the next morning. And then they took me in to did the taking it out and stuff. And then I go to post-op. I ain't had nothing to eat for 2 days now. So I was hungry when I could smell the mess hall. The guys bringing the trays in to these guys that was there, and the patients. And I said to the nurse, when do I get my tray? And she said, well, you don't get nothing to eat tonight. I said, give me a sleeping pill then, because I can't stand this smell. And she did. I went to sleep. Didn't get no meat, didn't get nothing until the next morning, but I didn't have to lay there and smell the food.
Did you get back with the unit before
Yeah,
Tunisia, or was it after?
I went back to the unit before we left Africa, North Africa.
Yeah, what happened after you were wounded?
Left Tunisia, yeah. When we took Tunisia, I don't know whether I told you or not, it gave me a job, a jeep and a British soldier and an interpreter, and I was patrolling Tunis to make sure they didn't loot the town. That was a good job. And this British guy, every time we'd find somebody or something, he'd be real strict. He'd want to turn him in, you know. I'd say, hell, he was just looking for something to eat, you dummy, you know. And we'd have to stop for tea.
So where did you guys go after North Africa was wrapped up and you kicked Rommel and his forces out of Tunisia? Where did 168 go?
We stayed in Tunisia, and loaded ships with gas and oil and stuff when they made the invasion of Sicily.
We talked about it a little bit yesterday. Did you guys get re-outfitted with new uniforms and equipment?
Well, I can't remember, but I'm sure, you know, we was back there loading boats with oil and gas and stuff, and that was the only time you worked a shift. You know, you worked 8 hours and then you was off for 8 hours or whatever. Well, all you could do was go swim, clean up, you know, and back on the shift again the next day. But whether we got clean clothes or not when we left, I have no idea. And then we didn't go in until you got to Salerno.
Did you go anywhere like in Algiers or anything and train up and get replacements before Salerno?
No, you just stayed in a big white building. We just did close order drill and stuff like that. It's just something to keep them busy. And that's when I got the 2 machine guns on the roof of the hotel there. And I kept them till Eisenhower's guys that guarded him. They were, what was 133rd, one of the regiments.
The 2nd Battalion.
2nd Battalion, yeah, okay. Well, they come. That's when we left Algiers and took off. And I think the first thing we did, we was guarding a Flying Fortress base. They had these airplanes, and we were out around the perimeter, you know. But they'd go on a bombing raid, and then, of course, you got to where you'd watch them go and come, and they'd come in, and we could go down and clean their guns, and that way we could sleep in those planes on those wool coats, they had their leather with the wool inside of them. We was always trying to get on the gun crews, that way we could clean the machine guns that they had, and the guys was tickled, they didn't have to do it, so.
Lead me up to how you guys took off from North Africa and when you learned where you were going.
Well, when we left North Africa, we left there, we went to Salerno, and then we bypassed. Was
that Naples?
Yes, Naples. And then we went on up, and then I think our next one was the Volturno River. We went across it. The only way, it was pretty steep, pretty stiff water. I was so small and light, I went back to the 81 millimeter mortars and got a shell jacket. You just slip it over and you put shells in the front and shells in the back. And those 81 millimeters weighed enough that I could get across the river without washing down it. If you went down, they just let you go. You couldn't, we got across all right, but they had landmines all in there, so we had to stop. Believe it or not, this Bill and me was standing there together, and we'd got us a German stove, like our ones we got now. This one was smaller, it was about that long, about that big around. And it took gas, and you just heated the bottom, and the gas that starts spewing out, then you'd light it. We was making coffee out of that river water. Well, we was pinned down, we couldn't go nowhere, and we was behind the bank, they couldn't see us. So we just sat down there and smoked our pipe and made some coffee.
Lead me up to the, what's known as the second crossing of the Volturno, because you guys had to crossing it.
I can't even remember where we was at and we crossed that second time. Huh?
Alefe or Dragoni?
Yeah, one of them, we called it the pool table. It was a real flat place. And then the mountains was behind it. We called it the pool table. That's one of them cities you're talking about. But we finally got across there and got into the mountains, and they was really, I don't know whether there was stragglers there or not. I think we took that. We were going to Cassino then.
Do you remember when you guys got that tanker jacket? Did you get the bottoms too?
No, we didn't get the bottoms, just the jackets. We was in Italy when we got those.
So it must have been before the winter of 43 or 43?
Yeah.
Mount Pantano?
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that place?
I can't remember what we did other than fight to take it. And I don't know whether that's where the wheat field was or whether it wasn't. One of them might have been that one before we had the rolling barrage, because we couldn't take it. We just tried and couldn't do it. And so we got back there, and then they said, well, they're going to give us a rolling barrage. And they would fire those guns, they'd light, and then we'd move forward. They'd raise the gun, fire again, and we'd move forward. And that's the only way we could take that. We finally took it. That's the only way. And that's where, when we left there and got to the casino, the first night there, we went into town and had it, but they counterattacked us, sold us out. Monastery was over here. We was kind of like this on the hillside there. And we never did take it. We fight, but we never take it. Finally, they decided to bomb it. And that's when we sat there and watched them bomb that thing. Wave after wave after wave of them flying fortresses. And it was no sooner than got that done, they relieved us to go somewhere else.
And you told me the story that you guys didn't use them, but can you tell me when you started seeing mules in service with the division?
Well, one of those, the only time I seen the mules was on one of the battles. And it seems like to me, it was after we got across that wheat field, and there was a creek that run down through there, and then the mountains was on this side, a hill. You start in the hills and then the mountain, or you call them mountains, but anyway. And these mules, this mule guy was bringing those mules back. Well, he'd been hauling ammunition is what he'd been hauling, but that's the only time I seen mules other than the Germans. They had mules. So when we decided to move from this, where I seen those, we went around the bend, and when we got across that wheat field, we was thirsty, been out there all day in that hot sun. And that water was coming down there, we all filled our canteens out of it, and they always holler, put your tablet in, well, we didn't put no tablet in. Good cold water we had. We went around the bend, there laid a mule right dead in the creek, right the corner. I don't know whether he was ours or theirs, but that's where he was at. I didn't throw my water away.
And you said the mules were typically used with the rifle companies?
Well, actually the mules, that's about all I seen them. But like I said, they must have been hauling ammunition to the rifle companies. They was the only one ahead of us, I'm sure they wasn't taking it to the Germans, so.
Able to get food from the Italian locals when you guys were moving through areas?
Oh yeah, once you took a town, they'd come back out. They'd hole up and they'd come back out. They were good people and bad people, just like anywhere else. And like I told you, we was at that one farmhouse. I don't remember where it was, and come out. It was on night patrol. And I come back and it was sopping wet rain. It rained and rained. And we were staying down where the stock was supposed to be in the house. But this old man, I kept giving him tobacco. He's smoking his pipe. And when I come in that night, he was standing up on his landing going in, hollering at me, Vinicui, Vinicui. That means come here. And I went up there and he put a blanket, stayed there in front of the fireplace, took my clothes off, dried them out, give me a little drink of wine, and hell, I went back downstairs and slept like a baby. They sent me to a
signal company?
Signal company, yeah. And that's where I found out the war was over. Then we went into Florence. My base was the Leaning Town. It was right. Tower was there, and I got put on detached service and went to Florence, outside of Florence, a little town, and we go into Florence and take the cable down and put it on spools. We had a little gas engine, and they'd roll that spool up. We knew just about how much to take down off the balconies, all the balconies along. And every one you went through, you get a little drink of wine at the time. Time you got to the end of the day, you're glad to ride back to the camp. You'd eat supper, and that was about it, boy. You'd hit the hay.
Tell me about how you felt when you learned that the war was over.
Well, how would anybody feel? I was elated.
Do you remember when you came back?
Come back home?
Yeah, you come back home.
I come across that Atlantic in a Liberty ship in January and February. And you think you've seen an ocean, you're looking like this, up and like that down. And when that screw would come out of the water, that whole boat, you'd think that thing was going to fall apart. I went to Camp Kilmer. They were just building that when we was at Fort Dix. Camp Kilmer, and we stayed there. You'd have to take all your clothes out the bag, and everybody examine them, and okay, put them back. That's all. Next stop, it was the same thing again. And we left, they give us a big spiel there at Camp Kilmer about, you've been overseas, you got to do this, going to be different now, and it gave you a whole line. And then the next day, you'll take your clothes out of the bag and show them what you had, and put them back. And finally, I got sent from Camp Gilmer to Camp Grant, Illinois. I never even knew there was a Camp Grant. And I was there a couple of days is all, I think. And I got the train, that slow train from Camp Grant, Illinois. Well, I think we went into Chicago. I don't know where we caught it, but anyway, we took a bus in town, caught the train coming to Des Moines. And guess what? February the 14th is when I was discharged. It was Valentine's Day. Well, I got discharged in Camp Grant, and you had to share a cab. There was another guy, I don't know who he was. He was going west. I wanted to go east. My distance would have been longer than his, and so I had a sister that lived on the west side, real close, just off University. And so I thought, well, if I just take the short ride, be less money, and then I'll get my sister's house, and then she'd take me home to Marie. So that's what I did. I went there and shocked her when I walked through the door, and she called my brothers. They drove the beer truck for City Club beer semis, had a semi route. She called them. So they'd meet us out to my mom's house, Mom and Dad, and Marie just lived up a block from my mom and dad. Of course, I went there first, and then when they come, we all went back down. They backed the semi right up, and then for a couple of days, we just stayed there and partied.
In the beer truck?
Yeah, we get all the beer we wanted. The oldest boys of mine, I didn't know anything about them, but they was slipping beer out. They was kids, They was slipping beer out along the railroad track. I never seen my mother drink, except that day she took a swallow of something. I don't know what it was.
You stayed in touch with a couple of these guys after the war. You told me a story about how you met up with, I think, 3 of your buddies and had a beer after the war.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about how that went down?
You mean the 3 that come from West Virginia?
You just said that you had a cold beer. You'd met up with 3 other guys and you had a cold beer.
Yeah, it was from West Virginia.
What were their names?
Tom Donegan, Mark Gillingham, and Hamilton.
Tell me about. So they drove from West Virginia out here?
Yeah.
How'd they get in touch with you?
Well, all you had to do is pick up the phone book. My name was in there. And they probably knew because we wrote to Tom all the time. My wife did. And, conversed with, and they knew our address and stuff. But I met them downtown, yeah.
Were they all from the same area, West Virginia?
Yeah. They was from where the DuPont plant is, whatever it is.
Okay.
And they were all, they must have been foremen or supervisors or something, because Tom wanted me to go home with him, and he would build me a house, or he'd give me the house him and his mother lived in and build one for him. Either way I wanted it. And I just couldn't accept it. I didn't want to be that beholden to anybody.
These 3 West Virginia boys, were they Claiborne men, or were they related?
No, they were a report. I think we got them at Fort Dix.
Okay. So they actually were with you from North Africa all the way up.
Yeah, from Fort Dix on. Tom got hit at Sened. He got an elbow busted off. And after we took Sened, I got somebody and took a Jeep, went back to where he was at before they sent him on back to see if he, I didn't know how he was hit. I wanted to find out whether he going to make it or not, you know. And that's what it was. He had a busted elbow. Shell hit it or something. And but and like I say, we always conversed back and forth. But finally, got a letter. We sent one, and got a letter. His wife wrote and told him that he'd went to the vet's hospital. And what it was, I cannot tell you right now. And he passed away out there. For him at 10 o'clock. That's mine.
They want to talk to you.
Oh, it's some.
You have to put this in the blooper reel.
Hello. I probably missed it. Hello. Yeah. Usually I got a shirt on with a pocket and I carry it there. That way I keep track of it.